So the bill was dead on arrival. It never had an opportunity to even be debated in the House of Assembly because they used their majority to kill it at the very first stage. So there was no discussion on it. There was no debate on the bill. They offered no recommendations for change. There was no offer of any compromise or any opportunity or any desire to have any strong legislation in place because they voted against it before there was even any debate. Later on, they brought their bill, and which they said would be their anti-corruption legislation. They brought it. It was read for the first time. Mm-hmm. The following meeting, where it could have been read for the second time and then became law, actually took place 5 days before the premier called for election. Uh-huh. So it was a Monday meeting, and on that Friday he held his press conference and announced the date for election. So the point is that if we had gone through that process, the bill could have become law that Monday. Uh-huh. And he was calling election that Friday. But rather than going through that process and having the bill, they couldn't even allow themselves to be bound by their own anti-corruption bill for 5 days. For 5 days, from Monday to Friday, for 1 week. They refused to allow themselves to be bound by that legislation, so they didn't even pass it then. And so it's now been over 4 years since they've been in power. They've not brought any anti-corruption legislation, and now, after we've seen thousands of acres of Crown land alienated, where you've seen allegations involving tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, involving ministers of government, where you've seen attorneys at law making accusations of offering ministers a bribe. You've heard developers making accusations of ministers of government receiving bribes and having that information struck from the record of the arbitration. When you've had all those instances, when you've had ministers of government who, before they came to office, didn't own a vehicle. Now you see them living in houses that cost well in excess of $10 million within 4 years. And the question, and one has to question, how do you get from not being able to afford a vehicle to having a $10 million house when your only job has been as a politician in this country, and the highest paid politician in this country is $150,000 a year. Wow! So that is a new thing. Up to last year, the highest paid politician in this country was $125,000 a year. It's only during this budgetary year that's been increased to $150,000. Correct. So the reality is that when you look at that and you look at just the whole change and the cost of everything, where the Lower Bight Road, which is two lanes, has cost almost the same thing as the Leeward Highway, which is 4 lanes and twice as long. The 5 Keys Road costs almost as much as the Leeward Highway, and you hear the allegations of ministers of government having their hands tied in the construction companies that have built those roads. Then whether it's true or not, it has to raise some eyebrows, and it has to raise some concern. The whole issue of corruption. And this government has most certainly not been a government that's willing to go the extra mile and to do what they need to do to stamp corruption out.
Well, Mr. Leader, I'm glad that you explained that for the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, because I think the people in this country is taken aback when the Premier answered to the British government that it's going to take him to the end of the first quarter of next year to get an anti-corruption bill, and the people of this country is asking the question, how is it that and pass it in 1 day, when he wanted to pass his gambling bill that the people of this country did not want? He went in and passed it in 1 day. when he wanted to change the regulations on the national parks so that ministers could get access to Crown land and national parks. He ran and put it through one day, 3 readings, passed the bill. Why is it? The question the people are asking, then why it has to take, we already lost 4 years to get an anti-corruption bill. Now he's telling the British government it's going to take a next 3 or 4 months before he can get an anti-corruption bill, when this government is used to going to Parliament and pass 3 and 4 bills in one day.
Yeah, I fully understand that, and with the national parks of the amendment to the national parks never, at least during my tenure, never came before the House. So any amendment was done by cabinet.
Okay.
But let me also say, the reality is that if the government was interested in an anti-corruption bill, they would have brought it 3 months after they came to power, as they had originally promised. I don't doubt that at some point, some watered-down legislation very well may make its way to the House. I expect it to be watered, going and trying to close the barn gate after all the horses have already fled and all the horses are already gone. It's after the fact. And if they're truly interested, in justice, and they honestly have clean hands and have no objection to scrutiny, again, as I've requested in the past, I simply request that every member of the House signs onto the bill. While you can't make legislation retroactive, that each current member of the House provides for a special exemption, allowing for the legislation to apply to them from the first day. On my side is willing to do that. The question is, will the government accede to that request? And if they truly have clean hands and they have not done anything onto it over the last 4 years, then they would most certainly not have a problem with acceding to that request and allowing for the legislation to be specific to them as of the first day that they came to office. And in the case of those that have been there before and may have think that they have done something in their youth, forget that if they would just allow it to start from when they first came to office this time.
Correct.
Because we know of instances where members of government, members of the current PNP, have been in government before and had allegations passed of corruption against them. But it's a matter of just trying to ensure that there's good governance, that there's opportunity for all the people of the country, that government and governance of this country is about providing opportunity for people. It has been more about self-enrichment and self-promotion rather than empowerment of the people, and that is where we've fallen down. And I think that it is important for there to be strong legislation to, number one, stop what we're seeing, but to ensure that no future government has an opportunity to follow along these footsteps.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Let's Talk Politics live from the Turks and Caicos Islands. Tonight, my guest is the official